Other interesting cultural news, you have Hollywood finally admitting they can't think of anything new, so they're just going to do remakes from now on. Now, I've had this joke for years, especially about Disney, where if you look at the quality of a Disney film past, 10 years, I would say, it's basically a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. A fun little home experiment is if you photocopy a picture and you take a photo, then you photocopy that picture and you photocopy that picture, the actual quality of the picture degrades time and time again, which is a perfect metaphor for most Disney films. They just remake them and just make it worse and worse and worse. And Disney is by no means alone. You have, I believe, Paramount Pictures owns, or no, Universal Studios. They own the rights to Fast and Furious, which, again, if you're a gearhead, probably annoys hell out of you because the amount, or actually, if you have a modicum of intelligence, just because there's no logic. Or if you forget about logic, physics, and maybe if you had a Bud Light and your brain just melts, you can enjoy the film. You just can't think. What started off as amateur street racers stealing VCRs and tube TVs, which is hilarious to think the series is that old. That there was a time those were premium products in America that people really wanted. It was a VCR, and especially the VCR built in the TV, the little small combo that's about that big, well, also that deep in terms of the size. It's a cubic cube. But it used to be, again, there's the whole controversy about the intake manifold blowing up in the first film in the Eclipse and then not the car still magically working. But there was still a semblance of logic in the original films, I would argue. And then they just became a copy-paste of again and again and again, and got to the point where I could write a Fast and Furious fun experiment. We could write a Fast and Furious movie right now. Let's write a script. Copy-paste from the last film. You have a couple cool cars, usually sponsored by Dodge, or Stellantis, which owns Dodge. You have a cool Nissan GTR with what used to be Paul Walker, which is cool. Got the Dodge Challenger, Din Diesel. And nowadays, it's so ridiculous. You have some type of super bad guy. You have the main heroes of the film are able to somehow execute skill sets they've never had before, like hacking, also competitive fighting. Remember they're street racers, but now they can do it. Now, street racing means you can now have all these magical capabilities. But what else do we need to insert? So we have a cliche bad guy who doesn't really have much intelligence or motive besides being bad. You have Vin Diesel say something like family. That's more Rocky or Sylvester Stallone. But remember, this is a copy of a copy of a copy. So that very well, maybe his voice degrades that much, or improves depending on who you like more in terms of Vin Diesel versus Sylvester Stallone. But perhaps that actually is a good metaphor. The voice, it'll be the same text of family. You don't need that. We got family. Hey, I guess I digress. But you get the idea. And then if a bad guy comes, there's big explosions. The movie's about 2 hours. I just wrote a script for the Fast and Furious. It's not that hard. It's just a copy paste. Now, movie studios, again, they're making less and less money as less and less people go to physical movie theaters, which is where they used to make a lot of their money. And remember, when you see the box office value, they split that with the movie theaters. They're not getting all that whole amount. So it's one of those issues where they're making more money every year in terms of, on average, there are outliers that make $1 billion, which is why they make the Fast and Furious movies still. But they're making less money on average. Streaming is a huge competition vector for them. And to take a risk in terms of making a new idea, it might fail. So they decided, we're not going to take a risk anymore. We're just going to do things we already have done because we think it'll make money. Disney has shown it will not on average. Disney's lost about $1 trillion on films past couple of years. So that's by no means a guarantee for success like it used to be with Marvel. Like the Marvel comic movies, again, they're just a copy paste in terms of giant superheroes come in, big computers make CGI, go boom, and everyone's happy at the end and no one really dies. That did make $1 billion consistently for Marvel for several years as the fans are drones. They all went to the films without asking questions or perhaps caring about acting quality, but nevertheless, it made billions of dollars all the time. But even they are starting to decrease their revenue and decrease the profitability of the films. I suspect partially because those computers are not cheap and CGI isn't cheap, and that's mostly just a CGI movie with one or two actors in a suit, or sometimes just a green suit, saying a couple lines. But let's actually hear from the horse's mouth, or the donkey's mouth, perhaps. Now, this is Paramount CEO Brian Robbins. He actually announced the end of all their original content, and they'll only focus on remakes of existing intellectual property that they own. And it looks like when he asked for comment, he said, quote, "Outside of Barbie, things are going not so hot for Hollywood studios, who write the creative community's diminishing residual checks, unquote. Robin continues to say, the cable business is vaporizing. Movies have been eclipsed by TikTok and YouTube and streaming, which was supposed to usher a golden era of entertainment, turned out to be too expensive to maintain, unquote. He has a good point. When the idea of streaming first came out, it thought it was going to change the world. In a way, it did. It kind of made it so that people didn't want the cable box, to decrease the need to have a cable box. But you're seeing the same issues with cable. Back when Netflix first hit the market, it was much more economical, especially when they went into streaming. And there are a lot more options. Now you're getting less options in terms of the actual materials per streaming platform, but the cost is increasing, partially because of the infrastructure behind it. All these things are usually on AWS or Amazon Web Services, which, again, there's no cloud. It's just someone else's computer. A joke in IT. But think of it as opposed to having the video streamed on your computer, it's in a computer or a server in a data center across the globe. Now, those costs have gone up exponentially. Not only do they have the actual hardware for the infrastructure, but also have heating, cooling, electricity for the building. They have network connectivity, networking. The costs add up and they go up exponentially, especially when it comes to all of that data and the storage, all of that. And a lot of these companies, they're not making money on streaming. They're losing money. So it'll be interesting to see all these studios are doing streaming. Everyone is doing it. How many of them can survive? Now you have the actors and the writers, actresses, and writers all on strike, further proving that AI will probably take their jobs, as most movies are just copy-paste. But you also have AI in terms of they have CGI technologies where they actually have a whole movie just made by a computer. And there are very few actors who can actually sell out a movie just based on their reputation and their long-term acting career. There's very few of those superstars left. I mean, maybe Tom Cruise, people will see anything he's in. Chris Pratt, I believe, he's very popular. People will see a movie if he's in it. Pierce Brosnan, if you had to sell the good old James Bonds, but the time of that is long gone. But there's very few actors and actresses. Good old supply and demand. There's so many people in acting right now. There's not a lot of quote-unquote superstars that they themselves can really sell a movie because you want to see them. It's partially because the allure of actors and actresses is all but gone because we know everything about their lives thanks to all those silly TMZs, XYZ, Banana Falcon news outlets covering them. So there's not really much of a mystery to make you intrigued and want to see them more. They just, actually these days, they don't even shut the heck up on social media. And granted, a lot of people still worship them regardless. Now, specifically when he talks about the box office, Robbins explained, quote, box office profits are down 20% compared to pre-pandemic levels, unquote. So they're on an attack on all fronts. And now they actually have the actors and the writers working against them as well. They want higher residual checks that don't exist. One of the issues of these unions in this case, or many cases, not all cases, calm down people in the comment section, but they only want the upside. They don't want the risk. So if business loses money, they don't want to have their paycheck go down. But if the business goes up, they make a big profit, they want a bonus, so they want more money. Which, again, is not cohesive to long-term business success, I would say, in nearly all cases. So with Hollywood in particular, they have all these threat vectors, not just internally, but now externally as well. I can't help but think this is going to accelerate dramatically their shift to embracing artificial intelligence and more CGI, creating content for them. And when it comes to AI and computer technologies, coming up with new ideas is a little tricky, but in terms of a copy-paste of what they're already doing, that seems like the perfect use case for this type of technology. So we'll see how quickly they adopt it, but I can't help but think this is the writing on the wall, which is perhaps a lot more creative and original and legible than the writing from the previous writers. Moderate, pun, or burn? That's for you to decide. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Again, we're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of August, so I greatly appreciate you taking the time to click that button. Also, if you take the time to like and comment, that helps us grow and develop as well. Really appreciate the feedback that I'm getting. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.